Hello to all my booty seekers and cheek chasers. This is the Carpe Natem Podcast. I'm your host, Nate De La Hoya-Reynoso, and I am so grateful you are listening to this episode. If you're new here, you should know that I believe that my purpose is to uplift, inspire, and educate others to communicate masterfully so that they can better understand themselves and the world around them. I've spent years in the personal development and transformational technology space, and I want to share with you the wisdom that was passed down to me from giants in the industry. So if you're on a journey of self-mastery, just like me, looking to make dreams a reality and willing to be a leader for your family and community, then join me in seizing the butt cheeks of life and giving them a big ol' squeeze. Let's jump into the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Before I begin this amazing interview, I have to apologize. One of our microphones didn't plug in correctly, and the entire conversation was recorded on my computer's microphone instead of our standard microphone that we use at the studio. I am very sorry, but this person's message is amazing. She is so insightful, so wonderful, so genuine, and this was one of my favorite conversations that I've had with somebody. A total complete stranger who blew me away with her message and her story. Please forgive me for the low quality audio, but do not let it take away from the experience that is Maxine Friend. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Carpe Natem Podcast. I'm so excited to have such an amazing and powerful person today with me in studio. I have Miss Maxine Friend, who is a psychic medium, a master coach, and a spiritual mentor with over 14 years of experience. She is phenomenal at accessing your energetic ecosystem, and I am just so excited for her to share her story with everyone here. Maxine, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nate, and thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited because this is the first time I've had a guest like you on my podcast, and I am, and I'm sure everybody here also is very curious to know a little bit about you and what you do. Would you mind giving us a little rundown about who you are and what you do?
My name is Maxine Friend. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, but currently living in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, as a digital nomad. I've been working as a psychic medium, coach, and mentor now for over 14 years. My background is in the tech startup industry. And so how this all began is, well, my mother passed away 21 years ago, and I was able to communicate with her. So as a result, I started my endless quest in research of understanding how that phenomenon was taking place. And, that's the short, condensed version. But I think with trauma and loss, something is unlocked that's always inside of us. And as a result, now I have the privilege of working with the most beautiful and incredible clients and helping them access their intuition.
That's an amazing, it's an amazing gift and ability. I've met a couple of people who are able to channel and speak with spirits, and it's a very unique experience. In your line of work, have you helped others connect with lost loved ones, or or the spirits that you channel and speak to, are they random?
That's a really good question. In a regular channeling session, I really access only my spiritual guides. And there's a team of them. I've lost count of how many, because with any new lesson, a new teacher appears, just like on Earth. And so there are many guides. The difference with mediumship is there is a outside imprintation in your frequency that's coming in that you are translating. So it tends to be a bit of a different experience because that individual will come in. There's never any guarantee. Sometimes you'll get a pushy spirit that wants to come in that's not even related to the person, but they're close. So they want to get their messages in. So you never quite know what you're going to get. But the sessions are impactful, and normally their intention is around healing. That's normally why anyone wants to reach out, just to confirm or to bring peace. Healing and peace tends to be the reason.
It tends to be closure, I've noticed, because can I share a spiritual experience that I've had?
Absolutely.
So I was at this event where we had a Native American chief, and I believe he was the chief of a Lakota tribe, and he had the team that I was with experience an apepi, which is the hot sauna, hot room, whatever, with the coals and the drums and everything. And the temperature got up to like 120 degrees. And in that meditation state, it wasn't about, a lot of people were dealing with the uncomfortableness of the room, but I was like, I don't care about that. I want to really break through and see what happens. And in that moment, I remember feeling like this energy surrounding me, and then there was a release. And in that release, it was almost like I shot out of my body. And I went through the door of my grandmother's room, who had passed away. I'd lost both my grandparents. My grandmother I lost in 2013. My grandfather I lost in 2011 or 2001. And my grandma and I were very, very, very close. But losing her was such a traumatic loss for me. When I had this experience, I walked through her threshold and saw her sitting at her chair. And it was so vivid that I remember holding her hand. I could physically hold her hands in my hands. And she was there with my grandfather. And I asked them, I'm like, are you two happy? And they said, of course we are. Why aren't you? And like, I'm almost brought to tears by it, thinking about it, because it was for years, it just felt like they left a hole in my heart that I didn't know what to fill it with. And seeing them made me realize that hole I had to fill. I had to fill it with love. I had to fill it with the experiences and the lessons that they taught me, because if I didn't, it was basically just drowning me.
That's so powerful and amazing. And in your case, your grandparents were like parents. They were parent figures in your life. And what's beautiful and amazing about that type of experience, which I've experienced the sweat lodge as well, is very, very powerful. I've been to a few and had the privilege of connecting in that very incredible way. And what's amazing, what you learn once you tap into, your higher self and higher frequencies, is that they never, your grandparents are never gone. They're with you, and those messages and their spirit continues to live on. And what's powerful in those instances is that you realize, wait a second, I can connect directly. I don't need a medium. I can connect anytime I want to my parents, and I can still imbue their teachings, and I can continue to live in happiness knowing that.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And what a beautiful experience you had. That's just so incredible.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing. I've never been able to reach it again. But I've studied a couple different things. And one of the things that I studied was, there's an exercise that one person does. It's called like a mental mastermind, where you imagine and envision people sitting around a table with you, and they could be dead, they could be alive, and people having these full-length conversations with these people in order to kind of come to a conclusion or maybe even make a decision. Do you have any tips for how to, I wouldn't say channel, but in a way where they can draw upon the energy of people that maybe are gone or are no longer here, or maybe they are here, but we no longer speak to them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, first off, we're all psychics, so we can all tap into something greater than ourselves, and we all have an intuition about things. A lot of times we ignore it, and then that's the lesson. And as we move through those, the course curriculum of life, we learn and we become wiser. As far as mediumship is concerned, mediumship is attainable, but not everybody can achieve to those levels in waking consciousness. In a meditative state or in dream state, absolutely anybody can reach their loved ones we can all communicate with our loved ones. And when that bond is strong, when the love frequency connects between the two people, you can indeed communicate. Absolutely. So it's important to know that you can. And you can take solace in knowing that you can communicate with your loved ones. And some people dream of their loved ones, but they don't remember. But they'll wake up and sort of look for them or wonder why they're thinking about them. So it can be very subtle at times.
And they do appear in dreams. And every time they do, I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to see them, because it's like seeing them it's almost like seeing a family member on Christmas. They're like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. And go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the main tips, sorry, I didn't answer your question appropriately. When you have an inkling, when a song plays, when you think about that person, or you feel that the golden advice comes through, just trust that that feeling is being brought forth or being brought forward. Sometimes phenomenon can occur when family members gather and we are, commiserating a loved one or thinking about them or telling stories. But there's all kinds of things, but don't question if that was them. Know that it was them.
I feel, and this may be just a personal belief and just through an observation, I feel that nowadays it's very easy to not trust your intuition, almost as if we have been numbed by our cell phones, by our media, by all the things that are happening, where we don't trust our own intuitions anymore. Is that something that you've noticed, where people are either numb to their own feelings or unable to attach themselves to what is going on a unconscious or a conscious level?
It's an interesting time, and it's definitely a valid question. But as a whole, we are waking up. And, when I started in this industry 14 years ago, it was very behind closed doors, connected to a very specific tailored audience, where now it just feels very mainstream. And maybe that's just the energy I'm tapping into. But when we tap into spirit, we're starting to channel. when we tap into spirit, it's just like all these lights are appearing. People are waking up, and we can see it just from a global perspective. We can see, the clashes of all kinds of things. We're starting to question, everyone says we're stepping into a new matrix, a new reality. So there will always be folks that want to stay asleep and continue and follow the status quo. And there are people waking up and breaking away, and that manifests in so many different ways. People are starting to listen to their bodies and heal themselves, or start to form and create their own politics, start their own businesses, start listening to their intuition in a way they never have before. And it's very empowering and exciting, but it can also be very scary, because we have governments and we have laws and we have media telling us a different story. So it's about navigating that, that awakening, and how do we manage that voyage between the two worlds?
And that's, I guess, where I want to ask the next question is, if somebody is going down this path and has kind of gotten the sense that there is potentially more, so they're beginning their awakening journey, do you have any recommendations of what they could be looking for, or any kind of material that they can turn to in order to kind of guide them down this path? This could be books or even speakers. I mean, even you yourself would be an excellent resource for anybody kind of on this journey, because I know you're right, it has become more mainstream. There's tons of info out there now, but I want to make sure that I'm following the right person, or I'm following the right teachings. It's often, and this is from my personal experience, where I followed somebody who I thought was good for me, who had my best intentions in mind, only to later be harmed by that person, to be hurt by that person.
Yes, and that's now tapping into a very unfortunate, pervasive culture in, it's a very unregulated industry, the psychic energy. But to answer your question, it's really going within. Who do you feel naturally drawn to, So I could, right now promote my course that's going to be coming out, but the reality is maybe that won't resonate for everybody. There might be a different book or a different teacher that resonates for them. So the most important thing is to say, oh, I really like this individual. I love their content. I love their material. I like what they have to say. Do they have a book or do they have a course? And it's very personal. And we have to start trusting our intuition. And unfortunately, within this industry, as mentioned before, it is an unregulated industry. And you can end up with individuals that are not willing to build a client base. They want to, copy other people's work. I've had people copy my website, even down to the wording. But what ends up happening with that is the energy still falls over to me versus them, because they're words that were created by us, not by that individual. Because our words are primordial light, vibration, sound frequencies, right? So you can end up, for example, with an individual that will reach out to you on Instagram and say, oh, I really sense you're going through a hard time. Would you like me to consider you for a reading? That's a classic. And if someone is going through a hard time, they may feel, oh, this is a sign. I should really listen to what this person says. And this is when the energy is not in a pure consciousness that doesn't come from a place of healing, but more of a place of manipulation. And so this is where things can go awry if you are in a vulnerable place, and it could lead you down the wrong path. But eventually these individuals do show their true colors. They're asking for extra money up front. Those are things to look for. If there are multiple accounts, for example, my Instagram account at Maxine Friend has been copied about 50 times. And what they do is they copy the profile, and then they reach out and they DM my clients asking them for readings. And so I get messages every day saying, I don't think this is you. Is this you? So that's just one example, but there are too many to get into, where you can easily take advantage of someone who's feeling vulnerable or afraid, or they miss their loved one that crossed over. And this can, take you down a very manipulative path. So really it just, we want to feel like someone is there to help us and to heal us. So some of the things to look for is, are they reaching out to you versus reaching out to them? I will never reach out to anyone on Instagram or otherwise to ask them to get a reading. It's so personal. You need to feel guided towards that individual. Secondly, you want to make sure that you have properly researched that individual. Do you feel drawn to them? So those are two things to really look for. And the third, if they ask, they say, oh, I'm going to give you a free reading. And then they'll say, oh, your energy's not that great, but for 2,000, I can remove what's on you. I mean, that's charlatan stuff. That's a huge flag to get out of there, and to not give them any additional money.
That is crazy. That happens.
Yeah, it's very common, and it happens to coaches. It happens to psychics or anyone in some kind of consultation field, right? It's like, well, why do the work when someone's done it already, and just copy it and see if you can make some money off of it? So, I mean, that carries its own karma and its own energy, but it's important to be aware that these things happen. And it happens in all industries, right? There's great police officers and there's terrible ones. Same with lawyers or any type of profession. The problem with being a psychic is there is no regulation. There's no licensing. There's no guidelines to follow that are officiated. Mm-hmm. So it is just something to watch for, especially during these uncertain times, right? That's where that energy sneaks in, that Neptunian energy that we're seeing so much.
Right. And this is all great advice. The question that comes to me from this conversation is how does one trust their intuition? How does one tap in or kind of get aligned with their intuition? I know that it's a personal journey and each one is uniquely tailored. This is something that I struggle with, where I sometimes go with what my brain wants, not with what my heart wants, because I feel like, and this is something kind of different, but I thought I chose my wife with my brain because everything about her just made sense logically. But I later found out that I really chose her with my heart, but what I thought my heart wanted was something incredibly destructive. And I had realized that at one point they had switched spots. And I thought I was listening to my heart when really I was listening to a really tumultuous thinking. I was listening to my brain that had been, messed up by drugs, by trauma, by experiences. So what I thought my heart wanted, it really wasn't what my heart wanted. It was what my messed up adrenaline brain wanted. But what my heart wanted, what my soul wanted, was this peace, this love, this person that fit together like a puzzle piece with me. And since then, I have tried my best to listen to my intuition, but I feel like I still have issues reaching it. Do you have any advice for anybody who's looking to connect more with themselves as well as like trust in their own intuition? Because it is difficult if you don't know where to start.
Absolutely. So that's a two-part question. So to answer, with the heart and the head, especially in relationships, we obviously have free will to make those choices, but then there are these, what we call assignments, so if you have someone significant, you recognize them, they recognize you, and whether your heart or your head are screaming loudly, you're bound to go into that assignment with that individual and learn very specific things. And this can get tricky because a lot of people are obsessed with twin flames and all that stuff. We won't go there, but it's really about those significant relationships, whether we stay with them or not, teach us something about ourselves. And it sounds like you have gone through that journey and recognized, through trauma, we do definitely crave drama. So when the relationship is smooth sailing, we think something is wrong. And that's a part of self-sabotage, but it's about having compassion about the trauma that we have experienced.
100%.
As far as some tips of tapping into your own intuition, it's kind of a boring response, but really it's about getting quiet in a world that is very loud and wants to distract you, with whether it be social media or the outside world. I mean, there's too many things to mention, but tapping into nature, meditation, any type of, and this could be controversial because again, we're not, but just substance of any kind, whether it be sugar, porn, movies, novels, that any form of escapism, right? It could be drugs or alcohol. So if you think about what those things are, and I'm not shaming those things at all, definitely done my fair share over the years, but these are things that numb us from feeling and thinking. And so if we can get quiet through some form of meditation, meditation's not for everybody. For some people, running is meditation. For some people, it's hiking in nature. But if you can get quiet, that would be the first. And secondly, if you can clear your body of the toxins, whatever they may be. And that's a little trickier, right? I mean, I personally love sugar. That's my vice. I don't drink. I don't do drugs, although I did my fair share in my 20s and my 30s. And again, this is not to shame anybody, but these are things that you can look at or consider or start to very gently make different choices. And what will happen is your consciousness will be louder and it will be easier to respond to those messages from spirit.
Great advice. I know that you have experience with like coaching and healing. I have something that I have currently am in conflict with, and I'm wondering if I could get your take on it. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
I, in my younger years, made tons of mistakes. I was problematic. I did things because I was very ego-driven, very nihilistic. And I also had a substance abuse problem, and I hurt people. And I now, 3 years clean off of hard substances, in a committed relationship. I'm in therapy. I'm also medicated for an untreated diagnosis that I didn't even know I had. Now that I'm in a place where I'm like healing and doing my best to help through something like this podcast, through my own work that I want to do, I still have conflict with what I did in my past because I feel like that was such shameful behavior. It was so terrible. and the people that I affected. It's been years since any of those incidents happened, but I still carry so much of it. And I also carry a lot of the shame, and the guilt, which I'm afraid of it coming and biting me in the butt. Like somebody, regardless of how much work I've done up to this point, regardless of who I am now, I still am afraid to be painted as this person that I was. And I'm no longer this person, and I don't stand for those morals, and I don't stand for those ethics anymore. And I do my best to live through that. But I currently have conflicts with my past self, because my past self, as it was learning, as I was growing, I had to go through those things in order to become what I am today. I also am just immensely shameful of that time in my life because it affected other people. Do you have anything to say to that kind of
conflict? It's so powerful. And just first off, thank you so much for just sharing that. That's a very intimate part of life. And, it takes a lot to be so awake that you're so acutely aware of your journey and where it took you and what was destructive. And you have made incredible leeway in terms of your path to healing. And, you're more healed than you realize, because if you're that awake of what could be perceived as mistakes, you're more awake than the average person who just continues making them. So what's really important to unpack here is when we're undiagnosed and we're moving through life that literally doesn't approve of our choices, we rebel because we're looking for a way to either make ourselves feel better or be heard or understood. And so when we understand that souls come on earth unhealed, we're all unhealed on different levels. And we have to have compassion for that journey, because that is the journey of being here on earth. And it's not all difficulty and misery and trauma. There's also great joy, and great love and great abundance and so many beautiful things. But it is part of the path. And if you look through substance abuse, it's our body's intelligence of saying we need to self-medicate, something's wrong. So if you were to take addiction as actually a form of intelligence, you're looking at that saying, I knew something was wrong and I was trying to intuitively regulate myself. And what can happen is we move through life and we're met with disapproval constantly. That's the narrative through our parents, our teachers, everyone, as we're trying to awkwardly navigate through life unhealed, right? So you're self-medicating, which of course takes you down an even deeper, more traumatic path. And then along the way, as we are unhealed, we hurt people. We all know that hurt people hurt people. If you look at someone, it's easy to paint them as evil. That's the ego saying you're a bad person and there's good people and there's bad people. But the reality is we all carry that duality and we're working through it. So when you talk about shame and guilt, it's like you're not giving yourself permission at all to have been that person and to move through the path of healing. And the path of the archetypal healer, which is your path on earth, right? We have to go through the shit, excuse my language. But it's just, how else are you going to be able to help others? And there's bound to be things now that you carry that awareness inside of you of, wow, that was awful. And so part of the shame and guilt is, first off, having compassion for where you were, because, Nate, you weren't heard. Society didn't approve. The authority figures didn't approve. So what do? You rebel. You're misunderstood. You're unhealed, right? I carried a very similar path in my own journey. I was kicked out at 17, had a problem with authority, definitely abused alcohol and drugs in my 20s. I did not become addicted, but I believe truly that we're all addicted. My addiction is sugar. But we all have addictions. We all are looking for distractions when the world becomes too traumatic. And we have to have compassion for that path and understand that taking ownership of that path is part of the process. Saying, you know what? This was why. And I need to generate compassion inside of my heart that I was an unhealed, or that we all are unhealed people just trying to navigate this path. So compassion and understanding that this is the journey. So if you look up the journey of the archetypal healer, Carolyn Myss talks a lot about that. Myss is spelled Myss. She's a very famous medical intuitive, but she talks a lot about sacred contracts and archetypes. And the archetypal healer journey is a journey of a very old soul. And it's the journey of, I came here on earth to heal a lot of things. I'm going to choose parents that will test me. I'm going to choose a time in society, and I'm going to choose all these things so I can overcome them in this life. And then once you overcome them, you are now indoctrinated in being able to assist others in their path. So self-compassion and understanding that it's almost like taking ownership of how you were, even if you don't like it.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I struggle with most right now, is owning that, that behavior. I want to disconnect myself so much from it, but in reality, if not for those experiences, I wouldn't be where I am today. And as destructive as they were all lessons on how not to live. I realized that now, and now that I'm older, with hindsight, I'm able to look at it from a place of like, okay, I understand where the mistakes were made. I understand why this behavior was problematic and destructive. But now that I'm so far removed from it, I still have trouble giving myself permission to be okay. I've trouble for giving myself permission to feel grace, or to feel forgiveness. And I guess what's coming from me, I don't guess what's coming up for me is I'm having difficulty forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm.
Truly.
Yep. And it's a huge part of our journey. And, I've done things I'm not proud of either, and treated people that I loved not in the most optimal way, especially in my teenage years. And at a certain point, we just have to understand that when people act out, it doesn't matter who it is, they're in pain. They're not being heard. And we have to have compassion for that person, that small child inside us that was either not heard or felt misunderstood. It's like if you look at the bully, bullies were bullied. They were hurt, and they project and lash out as a result of that. But they're the most hurt, right? If you look at people who feel like they need to take from life, whether they steal or grand larceny or larger crimes, they don't feel they deserve these things. They take them. Right. So going back to you, it's just the shame and the guilt is real. And it's just really about, first off, giving yourself permission to feel those feelings, which can kind of be uncomfortable. There's a lot of spiritual bypassing in the spiritual community that says, no, just be positive and happy all the time. And absolutely not. You got to move through the feelings and give yourself permission to feel them, first off. And then secondly, to have compassion, find that tenderness, that tender compassion inside of your heart, that you can hold that small child inside you. So any inner child work, if you do inner child meditations, or think of that small child inside you, and as an adult, if you want to hold and hug that small child, what would you tell that small child? And it's so important to forgive ourselves, and to also know that it wasn't a pointless, painful experience, that you can be of service in ways that feel fulfilling, not as a compensation technique, but as a true ability to say, I've been through this, I can help you, I can serve. And that's how most psychics and people in service work operate. If you talk to any psychic or any person, they've been through trauma to the extreme. They've been through all kinds of healing journeys. And that's what, gives them the PhD in life in order to move through. So you can look at your journey, Nate, and say, yeah, I did some things I'm not proud of. But the reality is we all have. Nobody is impervious to that journey. And for you to be so awake and aware puts you ahead more than you realize, because you've done the work and you've done a tremendous level of healing that has created that awareness of how you've affected others. And you didn't have to cross over to see that. You're able to see it in consciousness in 3D in real time. So you need to congratulate yourself for having cultivated such a deep awareness of your path. But it's also, if you feel called to it, maybe time to do some inner child work and feel and cultivate some inner compassion, because you have so many gifts and you have so much to offer the world, like this podcast and what you're doing. Like, you have a unique voice. We talked about this on the phone, and you've got something so special and wonderful to offer the world, and no one can do it like you. And so it's important to not let non-forgiveness block you from your greatness and from the later achievements in the future that are held for you in this timeline.
Incredibly powerful words, incredibly powerful. I'd like to, from here, transition into a little bit more about you. I know that you have a program coming out and a course, and you do a couple of other things. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about what you have working on, and maybe if somebody resonates with what you're doing, how they can support you and how they can join? I'd love to hear about it too, personally.
Yeah, I'm actually just decided to offer. It's like a 7-week program, and it's 1 day a week, and we all gather on Zoom, and I go through. It's an 8-module course that's been created, and it's in the process of becoming a self-study program. But it is really fun, and I just love teaching, so I love guiding people through this program. But it's a spiritual mentoring program about activating your intuitive superpowers. So really, it's about, we go through these different modules, which can help you understand how to manage your energy, how to protect it. There's an entire module on psychic, there's safety, clarity. We talk about health and wellness. We talk about boundaries. So there's all kinds of modules to provide you with all of the necessary tools to understand how to tap in uniquely to your own intuition. So this course is different in the sense that it's not, okay, this is the Maxine way and this is how it needs to be done. It's more as a useful guide, and it's open for how you choose to move through this existence and to open up to spirit. So it's not a course to tell you how to do it, but to provide you with these wonderful guidelines so you can find your own tailored method to tap into your own intuition, because everyone's energy signature is unique.
Very beautiful. So, it's like putting the power back into the hands of the people.
Yep. And it's going to be starting on July 1st. And so there'll be an open call for that. So I'm mostly active on Instagram, which is at Maxine Friend. And of course, my website is MaxineFriend.com. And of course, if you feel called to it, wonderful. If you don't, it's more important that you tap in to see if this is the type of program that would resonate for you. Again, you're always in charge, right? There's no teacher in charge of you in your healing.
I love it. I love it. I want to end the call with maybe 2 more questions. One of them being, do you believe that there's a message that more people need to hear?
I think that it's important for everyone to understand that they are uniquely gifted. It's so, everyone thinks, oh, you have this special gift. But the reality is you don't worship the mail carrier, do you? You really don't. Do you worship the guy or girl that shows up at your door with the mail? And it's the same with a psychic or a medium. We're just service people, and we're just here to serve. There's nothing special or amazing about it. It's really just the work we chose in this life. But everybody has unique and special gifts. And we can get caught up in the languaging or society that, oh, it's all been done. Everyone's written a book. Everyone has a program. Everyone has a this. But the reality is they don't offer it the way you do. No one has your special style, your special energetic signature, and that we all have something to offer. So if we can think of everyone raising their light and being light bearers to show others the way, imagine what the world would be like if we all did this. I mean, how incredible.
It'd be a whole different world.
Absolutely. And it's starting. It's not all bleak. I mean, a lot of the media out there is bleak, but there are beautiful things taking place. We are exposing darkness and we're moving towards light. We are waking up as a people. So there are wonderful things to look forward to as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for that response. And I guess the last question I have is, this would be mostly for people who are new to into this world, who are, maybe this is their first introduction into it. Do you have any type of guidance that you can offer as advice for anyone who's basically taking their first step into this journey? You said to obviously see who you resonate with and who are you attracted to, and to make sure that the person that you are following is, you do your due diligence. But do you have any other practical advice for people who are just starting this journey, who are just now waking up? I'd love to hear what you'd have as an insight for them.
I think it's important to understand the metrics of energy. Sometimes we can get really caught off guard with kind of the new age woo-woo, especially if you're new to it and you're thinking, geez, like this sounds airy-fairy. But if you look into quantum mechanics and you look at energy at its very core, it can never be destroyed. We know that. So where do our loved ones go? They're still a form of energy. Their vessel, their body expires, but their energy doesn't. So if you are new and you're curious, a nice place to start is just understanding energy. And there is science now proving psychic energy, in the quantum field. So that might be an interesting place for people who are curious and they want to explore this, that maybe aren't buying into the really galactic out there stuff that is available. If you're not there yet and you're not at that place, I totally understand as a very grounded, earth-based psychic myself. I'm very type A. So the really in the cloud stuff may not be for you, but if you understand energy and want to learn more about it, that might be a wonderful beginning point.
And that is something that I've talked about on the podcast, is like your words translate into energy, and everything that you put out there is a frequency that attracts or repels what you do or don't want. So if you're doing it at a conscious level, you can attract things that you do want, but at an unconscious level, you can attract things that you don't want because you're unaware of the energy that you're putting out. I believe that is a great place to start, especially with energy, because if you can at the very minimum realize that the words that you say to yourself, the words that you say to the environment that you're around, dictate the perception and the reality that you live in.
Oh, that's so well said. And to further that, I think, we're very into manifestation with our thoughts, but it's really important to ask yourself, what kind of content on the internet are you consuming? What kind of texts are you sending to friends? Those are all energetic transfers, right? Those are all energetic imprints. What kind of phone calls are you having? Are you talking about other people? Are you gossiping? Are you, this is so important, because when we talk about manifestation, we can't, think positively for 5 minutes in the morning and then just complain about our day all day. And it's also programming. So pay close attention to what kind of content are you consuming? What are you watching on TV or on Netflix? I mean, this all matters if you are trying to reset yourself energetically.
Beautiful, Maxine. Thank you so much for all your wisdom that you've dropped on this episode. Thank you for sharing all the amazing things that you do. I know that you already kind of told us where we can find you. It's at Maxine Friend on Instagram and at MaxineFriend.com.
Yep.
Is there any other way that we can support you or?
No, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity, Nate. And you've just got something so special going on, and I just feel honored to be a part of it. So thank you so much.
I am delighted and honored that you took the time out of your day to spend a couple of minutes with me. And I appreciate you so much, Maxine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Carpe Natem Podcast. If you love this episode, please consider leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Music or iTunes. It takes 30 seconds for you, but for us, it helps spread positivity to more people during these chaotic times. It helps build a community, and it makes me smile from ear to ear. Speaking of community, we have a Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Carpe Natem. Just answer the 3 questions to get access to some extra motivation and inspiration for your timeline. If you would like to support this podcast, screenshot this episode and share this to your story. Tag me at Carpe Natem 114. That's going to be my handle across all platforms, including TikTok, if you'd like to give me a follow. If you haven't already, please rate us and subscribe on Spotify or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. And lastly, you can find all episodes, linked to resources, and opportunities for coaching and mentoring from me at carpenatem114.com. I cannot thank you enough for spending part of your day with me. You are all rock stars taking the necessary steps to be your best self, willing to do whatever it takes, and ready to grab life by the butt cheeks. So until next time, this is Nate Hoya-Reynoso signing off.